"You're being selfish," my son told me, right before his wife hurled a glass of red wine straight at my face. The room, it didn't explode. It went silent, like the truth had finally decided to wake up in front of all three of us. And when I wiped the wine off my eyes, I saw something in my son's expression that scared me more than the accusation he wasn't defending her. He was hiding something from me. Before we go deeper, hit subscribe for me. These true marriage stories survive because of people like you. And drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. I read them all. I don't remember the argument starting. I only remember the moment her fingers tightened around the stem of the wine glass, the way her knuckles went white, the way her lips curved, not in anger, but in something colder, calculated, practiced. My daughter-in-law Anna wasn't the type to lose control. No, she was the type to choose the moment of destruction. And that night she chose me. The liquid hit me before I even understood what she had thrown. A warm splat across my cheek, a sing in the eyes, the smell of a fermented fruit soaking into my shirt. I blinked slow, heavy, not from fear, from disbelief. Across from me, my son Ethan stood frozen, as if someone had unplugged his body. His jaw tensed, his breath paused, mid-chest. And then the sentence that broke more than the glass ever could. "Dad, you're being selfish." Selfish. After everything I had swallowed for him. After the nights I spent lying awake, hoping he'd find himself again. After the bills I covered silently so he wouldn't drown next to the woman he called his wife. I stared at him, my son, my own blood, and all I saw was a boy trying to defend a storm he couldn't control. Anna didn't apologize, didn't gasp, didn't regret. She smiled. A thin, cruel smile. The kind of smile someone wears when the story has already been written in their head and they're waiting for you to speak, just so they can tear you apart with it. "See," she whispered to him, "he doesn't even deny it." Ethan didn't look at her. That was the first thing that felt wrong. He kept his eyes on the floor, as if something down there was safer to face than either of us. I wiped the wine from my cheek with the back of my hand. My voice came out lower than I expected. "Tell me," I said quietly. "What exactly am I being selfish about?" He swallowed. His throat bobbed once, then twice. And in that hesitation, in that trembling little pause, I felt it. There was more here, something unsaid, something he didn't want me to know. "Dad, you need to stop controlling everything," he finally muttered. "I haven't controlled anything," I said, barely above a breath. But he didn't hear me. Or maybe he did and ignored it because the truth wasn't convenient here. Anna stepped closer to him, looping her arm round his. Her nose dug too tightly into his sleeve. Her voice, sugar-sweet, poison smooth. "He doesn't understand boundaries, Ethan. He never had. If she had slapped me, it would have hurt less." Boundaries. The word echoed strangely in my chest. This wasn't about the argument. This wasn't about the dinner. This wasn't even about the spilled wine. This was about something bigger, something she knew, something Ethan was terrified I would discover first. I took a deep breath. "Ethan," I said, keeping my voice steady, "look at me." He didn't. He kept staring at the floor like a child caught between two parents. "Ethan," I repeated sharper now. "Look at me." This time he lifted his eyes halfway. Not fully. Not bravely. Enough for me to see it. Fear, but not fear of me. Fear for something. Or someone. Buying that fear was guilt. And behind the guilt was pain. A pain I recognized instantly. Because I had worn it years ago, when I was his age, standing between ambition and loyalty, between my wife and my father, between what was right and what was easy. I stepped closer. "What aren't you telling me?" I asked. Anna exhaled loudly, rolling her eyes. "Oh, God. Not everything is about you, John. We're done with this conversation." She tugged his arm. "Let's go." But he didn't move. That was the second thing that felt wrong. He stayed there, anchored to the spot, as if something inside him wouldn't let him walk away, not yet. "Ethan," I said, lowering my voice again. "If you're in trouble, tell me." His breath caught. Anna squeezed his arm harder. "He's not in trouble." She spat. "You're the problem. You always have been." The wine on my shirt cooled, tightening the fabric. The smell grew stronger, suffocating, filling the air between us like a warning. I took one more step toward my son. "Ethan," I whispered, "if you're scared, blink." His eyes flickered. Once. Barely. But enough. He was scared. Terrified. Not of me. Not of the argument. Of something he was hiding. I finally understood. She wasn't defending him. He wasn't defending her. They were protecting something else. And in that exact moment, in that tiny second of clarity, Anna realized I had seen it. Her smile dropped. Her grip tightened. Her voice sharpened into ice. "John, stay out of our marriage. This is your last warning." My last warning. I stared at her, and then I did the one thing neither of them expected. I pulled out my phone, typed 3 words, 3 quiet, calculated words, and pressed send to the only person who would understand exactly what I had just uncovered. My lawyer. Ethan's eyes widened in horror. Anna inhaled sharply, stepping back as if the ground shifted beneath her. 'Cause they both knew something. People throw wine when they want to humiliate you. People throw accusations when they want to scare you. People throw warnings when they're losing control. But a man like me, a father who has finally seen the truth behind his son's eyes, I don't throw anything. I act. And tonight I had acted. The message delivered. 3 words. 3 quiet detonations. We need to talk. And that was the moment everything began to unravel. The message had barely delivered when the room changed. It wasn't the sound, there was none. Not a gasp. Not a protest. Not even the clink of the abandoned wine glass on the table. It was the silence. A thick, suffocating silence that wrapped itself around the 3 of us like a rope being pulled tighter and tighter. Anna was the first to react. Her eyes snapped wide open, the color draining from her face, as if someone had pulled the truth right out of her bloodstream. "You texted your lawyer," she whispered. She tried to sound offended. She failed. Her voice cracked at the edges, a tiny fracture she couldn't hide. Ethan looked at her, then at me, then back at the phone in my hand. He didn't ask why, he didn't ask what I had discovered. He didn't ask what I planned to do. He only asked one thing, the thing a man will only ask when he's hiding something so heavy it's crushing him from the inside. "Dad, please, can we just talk without all this?" Without what I asked, watching him closely. He hesitated, this time longer than in part 1, without bringing lawyers into it. The word lawyers trembled in his throat like a confession, trying to escape. Anna stepped in front of him. A protective move, too protective. Aggressively protective. She wasn't shielding him from me. She was shielding herself. Her voice sharpened back into the icy tone she used when she wanted to look strong. "You're blowing this out of proportion," she snapped. And then she said the sentence that finally told me everything. "You don't need to involve your lawyer. We already handled it. We already handled it." Handled. Past tense, a decision made, a line crossed, a truth buried. My stomach dropped slow and heavy. "What exactly did you handle?" I asked, quietly. Ethan looked at her in panic. She realized her mistake instantly. I didn't mean she started, but I cut through her sentence like a cold wind splitting a warm room. "You did," I said. "And now you're afraid?" "I know what it is." Her jaw clenched, her eyes narrowed, and the mask slipped for the briefest moment, revealing fear, raw and unfiltered. I walked to the sink, turned on the water, let the wine flow off my face and down my sleeves, not because the stain mattered, not because I needed to feel clean, but because the silence made them uncomfortable. And I wanted that. I wanted them to feel what I felt. The weight of lies, the pressure of half-truths, the fear of a secret that has finally outgrown its hiding place. When I finally turned the tap off, I faced them again. "Where is it?" I asked. Ethan froze. Anna stiffened. "Where is what?" she demanded. "The thing you're hiding," I said calmly. She scoffed, but it was forced. "You're paranoid." I stepped closer. Not threatening, not loud. Just certain. "No, I'm observant." I pointed at Ethan. "He hasn't looked me in the eye since before the dinner started." Then I pointed at her. "And you only get violent when you're covering something you can't explain." Her cheeks flushed, not with rage. John Ethan said softly, "Please don't make this worse." "Worse than you two lying to my face?" I asked. He flinched. That was my answer. The truth wasn't small. The truth wasn't harmless. The truth wasn't a misunderstanding. It was big. It was dangerous. And it was something they had already done together without telling me. I sat down slowly, pulling out a chair. I rested my hands calmly on the table, not shaking, not angry, just ready. "Sit," I said. It wasn't a command. It was an invitation to stop running. But Anna reacted as if I had pulled a gun. "No," she snapped. "We're leaving." Ethan didn't move. That was the third wrong thing. He didn't follow her. He didn't grab his coat. He didn't even shift his weight. He stood there torn in half. "Ethan," I said gently, "if you walk out now, I'll assume the worst. And if I assume the worst, my lawyer will confirm it in the morning." His face paled. "Dad." "Sit." He swallowed hard. Then he moved. He pulled out the chair opposite mine and sat down, elbows on his knees. Hands clasped the picture of a man bracing for collapse. Anna remained standing, shaking. But she knew she had lost the moment he sat. She knew the truth wasn't between me and her. It was between her and Ethan. "Sit, Anna," I said. She didn't. But she didn't leave either. She hovered by the door like a shadow, afraid of the light. I waited. Then I spoke quietly. "Ethan, tell me what you're hiding before she does." His breathing hitched. Anna whispered, "Don't," under her breath, a whisper sharp enough to cut. And he broke. Not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly. Like a man whose ribs finally gave way under the weight of something he'd been carrying too long. "Dad," he whispered, "I didn't want you to find out like this." Anna grabbed his wrist, too tight, too desperate. Ethan, she warned. He pulled his hand back. Dad, there's something you need to know. The room shifted again. Another silence heavier than the first. My heart didn't race. My hands didn't shake. My voice didn't crack. I had lived long enough to know when a truth was about to change a family. Tell me, I said. He opened his mouth. But before he could speak, Anna screamed. Stop! And that scream, that raw, panicked scream, told me the truth was worse than anything I had imagined. Anna's scream didn't echo. It collapsed, like her voice itself realized it had crossed a line she could never step back behind. Stop! She had yelled, sharp, panicked, shrill, enough to crack the air between us. But the room didn't freeze because she screamed. The room froze because after she screamed, she went silent. Completely silent. Not a single breath dared move inside her chest. She clamped a hand over her mouth, eyes blown wide open, as if she'd just revealed the one thing she was trying desperately to hide. Ethan's head snapped toward her. Anna, he whispered. But she shook her head violently. The kind of shake people give when their life is balancing on a thread. And one wrong sentence will split it in half. No, Ethan, no, no. Her voice dropped to a terrified whisper. He can't know yet. He can't. He can't know yet. The words crawled under my skin like cold fingers. She wasn't saying, he can't know. She was saying, he can't know yet. Which meant sooner or later, they intended for me to know. Just not tonight. Not like this. Not with wine dripping off my shirt and guilt dripping off their faces. I leaned back in my chair, folding my hands in front of me. I'm listening, I said calmly. Anna backed toward the door. Not as a retreat, as an escape. Ethan stood abruptly, chair skidding behind him. Anna, stop, he said. There's no point hiding it. Now. Her voice cut loose, trembling. He doesn't understand. Then let me explain. Ethan snapped. That was the moment I realized something. He wasn't scared of me. He wasn't scared of the truth. He was scared of choosing between the woman he married and the man who raised him. Anna grabbed the doorknob. Ethan, if you say it, she whispered, you'll lose him. But Ethan shook his head. No, if I don't say it, I'll lose myself. He turned back to me, slow, heavy, breaking open from the inside out. Da, he said, voice, low, raw, trembling, in a way I had never heard from him. There's a reason we pushed you away tonight. A reason Anna acted like she did. I waited. He dragged a hand across his face. We didn't tell you because we honestly thought you would react badly. My voice stayed even, controlled. React badly to what? Anna's hand on the doorknob went rigid. Ethan exhaled shakily and said the sentence that cracked the ground under my feet. Dad, Anna and I were losing the house. My heart didn't drop. It hardened. Because that sentence didn't explain the whine, or the scream, or the fear in his eyes. It was too small, too simple, too incomplete. They weren't losing the house. They were losing something much bigger. I narrowed my eyes. That's not it? My voice was calm. Deadly calm. The truth isn't about a house. Ethan froze. Anna's breath caught. I leaned forward. That's not the secret that made her scream. I pointed at her shaking shoulders. She screamed because whatever you're hiding is about me. Anna choked. Ethan shut his eyes. Silence swallowed the room again. This silence was different. Not angry, not defensive. This was the kind of silence that precedes collapse. Finally, Ethan whispered, "It's about your name, Dad." My pulse didn't change, but something inside me shifted. "My name?" I asked quietly. He nodded once. Anna turned away, covering her face. Ethan swallowed hard. The reason we didn't want you here tonight. The reason Anna reacted the way she did. The reason we didn't tell you. He inhaled shakily. Dad, I signed something under your name. My stomach tightened. What did you sign? He hesitated. Too long. Far too long. Ethan, I said, voice low. What did you sign? His eyes glistened. Dad, I used your signature. My jaw locked. Anna whispered. Ethan, but he stepped forward, voice cracking. I forged your name. There it was. The truth. Not dramatic, not loud, not twisted with excuses. Just bare and cruel. I didn't speak. I didn't breathe. He kept going before I could. It wasn't for something bad he rushed out. It was for something urgent. Something we couldn't cover. Something Anna and I didn't know how to handle. What was it I asked? Silence. He didn't answer. Anna didn't answer. The air in the room thickened like fog before a storm. I stood up slowly. Ethan, I said quietly, tell me exactly what you forged my signature for. He broke. Truly broke. His shoulders caved. His knees weakened. His voice spilled out in a whisper soaked in guilt. Alone, my eyes narrowed. How much? He didn't answer. Anna whispered something under her breath, too soft to hear, but drenched in dread. How much? I repeated firmer. Ethan's lips trembled as he finally whispered the number. 62,000. The world didn't fall apart. It just reshaped itself. 62,000. Forged under my name. Without my knowledge. Dad, I swear. Ethan choked. We were going to fix it before you ever found out. I didn't move, not a muscle. Anna stepped forward. Suddenly, voice, trembling, but defiant. John, we only did it because we thought you would say no. You always interfere. I raised a hand. She shut up instantly. My voice came out calm, too calm. You forged my signature for $62,000. You hid it. You lied, you insulted me, and you threw wine at me because you were afraid I'd learn the truth. Ethan's face twisted. Dad, please. I didn't yell. I didn't break. I spoke softly the way a man speaks when he finally sees the full picture. Ethan, that isn't the whole truth. His eyes widened. Anna froze. Because I was right. Forging my signature was not the core secret. It was a branch, a symptom, a doorway. The real truth, the one Anna screamed to stop, was still locked behind them. I walked to the door, passed right by Anna without touching her, stopped next to Ethan, and whispered, There's something else you signed. His breath hitched violently. Anna stepped forward in panic. John, don't. But it was too late. I looked my son in the eyes and asked the question that shattered the last layer of whatever they had been hiding. Ethan, what did you sign over? That belonged to me. He broke completely. Anna sobbed, and the truth, the real truth, finally crawled up to the surface. Ethan didn't answer. Not right away. He stared at me with the eyes of a man who had finally been cornered by the truth he'd been trying to outrun for months. His lips parted. No sound came out. Just shallow breaths like his lungs were rejecting air. Anna stepped between us. No, she whispered. Her voice cracked like thin ice. He can't tell you that. Not this. Not tonight. I looked at her. Really looked at her. Her whole body was shaking, not in anger, in fear. The kind of fear people feel when they know the truth isn't just damaging, but irreversible. I spoke softly. Move, Anna. She didn't. So I stepped past her, not pushing, not touching, just moving with the certainty of a man who had already seen enough to know the rest would be worse. I faced my son again. "Ethan," I said quietly, "you forged my signature for a $62,000 loan. That alone is a crime." He winced. "But that loan wasn't the goal. It was a step." His eyes trembled. A single tear slid down his cheek, and he wiped it quickly, like he was ashamed to be seen breaking in front of me. I kept my voice steady, controlled. "Tell me what you signed over." Another silence. Then a whisper. "At your land." My heart didn't stop. It tightened, because it wasn't unexpected. Not fully. But hearing it from his mouth, hearing it confirmed, felt like someone pressing a thumb into a bruise that had been forming for years. "My land," I repeated. He nodded once barely. "The cabin?" I asked. He shook his head. "The workshop." Another shake. My stomach went cold. "Then what?" He swallowed hard. "Dad!" His voice splintered. "I signed over your house." My chest tightened as if the floor had tilted beneath me. "Which house?" The words barely left my lips. He looked at me with the kind of grief only guilt can carve. "This house." The world narrowed. The walls pulled closer. The air condensed. Even the light above us dimmed. Or maybe it just felt that way. I stepped back, not because I was afraid, but because betrayal, true betrayal, feels like your bones suddenly weigh 10 times more than your body can carry. Anna rushed forward, speaking too fast, too loud. "John, listen. It wasn't supposed to be permanent." I lifted my hand. She fell silent instantly. My voice turned to ice. "You forged my signature to take my home." Ethan flinched.
"Dad, please listen."
"No," I said quietly. "You will listen." I wasn't angry. Anger is easy, cheap, shallow. What I felt was older than anger. Deeper. Worse. It was the sound of something breaking quietly inside a father. Something he never thought would break. I took a slow breath. "Why my house?" Ethan's knees nearly buckled. "It wasn't supposed to happen like this," he whispered. "Then tell me how it happened." He looked down, and finally, the truth began to spill. "We were drowning," he whispered. "Bills, debts, the baby coming. The complications." His voice cracked. "Baby." I blinked. "What baby?" Anna choked on her breath. Ethan's head snapped up, horrified. They hadn't meant to tell me that part either. I stared at both of them. "You're having a child?" I asked. Ethan nodded slowly, painfully. "And you didn't tell me." He tried to speak. No words came out. Anna wiped her eyes. It was complicated. Everything was complicated with her. "Continue," I said. He exhaled shakily. "We needed a loan. A big one. But my credit was destroyed. Anna's too. And the bank refused us. So you used my name." He nodded. I didn't move. "Who gave you the papers?" I asked. That question hit both of them like a hammer. Anna stiffened. Ethan froze. "Not the bank. Not a notary. Someone else. Someone who shouldn't have had access. Who gave you the documents to sign over my house?" My voice was low, controlled. Ethan's Adam's apple bobbed.
"Dad, please."
"Who?" Silence swallowed the room again. Ethan looked at Anna. Anna looked at the floor. Then Ethan's voice broke. "It was someone you know." A chill slid down my spine. "Who?" I asked. He shook his head, tears in his eyes. "Ethan," I said firmer, "now you will say the name." He pressed a trembling hand to his forehead. "Dad, I didn't know what else to do." "Say the name." He swallowed, a long, tortured swallow. Then he whispered the 2 words that sucked the air out of the house and left the room hollow. "Uncle Mark." Everything went still. Even Anna stopped breathing. My brother, my blood. The one man I trusted enough to put on a key to this house, to handle my will, to watch over Ethan when he was young, to step in when I was sick, to check on things when I traveled. The one man I never imagined would stand behind my son, holding the pen, guiding his hand, while he signed my home away. Ethan broke into silent sobs. Anna covered her mouth. I didn't move, because the betrayal had just changed shape. This wasn't just deception. It wasn't desperation. It was orchestration. Someone planned this. Someone led them into it. Someone used my son, my house, my signature, to take something from me. Slowly, I exhaled and whispered, "Tomorrow, we're not talking to my lawyer." Ethan looked up, confused, tear-streaked. I continued, "We're talking to your uncle." Everything inside them froze. Back, because they knew. The real war hadn't even started yet. I didn't sleep that night, not because of the wine stain, not because of the forged signature, not because the house I had worked my whole life for had been quietly signed away behind my back. I didn't sleep because of the name that had come out of my son's mouth. Uncle Mark, my brother, my own blood, the man who used to carry Ethan on his shoulders when he was a kid, and the same man who now placed a pen in that same child's hand and guided it against me. I sat on the edge of my bed, watching the sky lighten from black to gray, then from gray to something almost silver. That was when I realized something. This wasn't about the house. It wasn't about money. It wasn't even about Ethan. It was about Mark, and something he had wanted for a long time. Something he finally decided to take. When the sun finally cut across the floor, I stood up, put on my coat, and walked downstairs. Ethan and Anna were already awake, pale, quiet, sitting at the dining table, like two kids waiting outside a principal's office. Anna didn't dare speak. Ethan swallowed hard when he saw me. "Dad," he whispered, "before you talk to him, can you please just listen?" I sat down across from him. "I've been listening," I said. "It's your turn to talk." He looked at his wife, then back at me. "Uncle Mark, he didn't force me. He said he was helping." A bitter smile tugged at my mouth. "Mark never helps anyone without collecting interest." Ethan winced. "He said you'd never let us take a loan under your name. He said you'd control everything. He said what I asked, voice low. He said, you don't trust anyone. Not him. Not me. Not Mom when she was alive." My jaw tightened, but I didn't respond. Because those weren't Ethan's words. Those were Mark's. Poison always sounds convincing when the person drinking it is desperate. "Dad," Ethan continued quietly, "Mark said the house is technically underused, and that if we needed to refinance later, he could help. He said it'd be temporary. He says a lot of things," I cut in. Anna finally whispered, "John, Mark told us you were planning to sell the house anyway." I stared at her, not with anger, with disbelief. "I never said that," I replied. "He said you were thinking about it privately," she added, voice shrinking. "He said you were going to downsize, move away, start fresh." My stomach turned. This wasn't random. This wasn't accidental. Mark had built a story, one brick at a time, to make them believe taking my home was inevitable. So why not just do it early? "Ethan," I asked, "did you ever ask me if I was selling the house?" He looked down. "No." "Why not?" He swallowed. "Because Mark said you'd deny it." Of course he did. Why verify a lie when the liar convinces you that the truth is unreachable. I stood up. Let's go. Ethan blinked. Now, yes. Anna grabbed his wrist. You're just gonna storm over there. Hey. I shook my head. No, if I storm, he'll expect it. But if I arrive calm, he'll panic. Because calm men are unpredictable. Calm men know what they're doing. Calm men are dangerous. And I was very, very calm. It wasn't far. My brother lived only 6 minutes away, close enough to drop by, far enough to avoid being caught. As we approached the house, Ethan's breathing grew uneven. Dad, please don't hate me for this. I didn't look at him. Hate is a choice, I said quietly. And I'm too old to waste choices on pain I didn't create. He wiped his eyes. I continued, but consequences don't care how old we are. He closed his eyes as if he knew what was coming wasn't going to be clean. When we pulled into Mark's driveway, his car was already there. Lights on, curtains open. He was awake, waiting. Cowards rarely sleep well. I knocked once. The door opened instantly. Too instantly. Mark stood there wearing a forced smile, polished by years of manipulation. John, he said warmly, as if we were meeting for brunch. What brings you here so early? I stepped past him without asking permission. Ethan, I said without turning, wait outside. He hesitated.
Dad.
Outside. He obeyed. Mark closed the door behind him. All right, he sighed. Let me guess. The kids told you about the loan. I turned slowly. They told me you gave them the documents. He shrugged. You weren't using the property. They needed help. I helped. My voice was a blade wrapped in velvet. You helped them commit fraud. The corners of his mouth twitched. Not in guilt, in amusement. John, words like fraud sound so dramatic when it's just family helping family. I stared at him, quiet, still, letting the silence rot him from the inside. He shifted uncomfortably. You've always been emotional about that house, he continued. It's sentimental. I get it, but you're alone now. It's too big for just you. You don't decide what's too big for me, I said. He raised a brow. And you don't decide what's too big for your son. You weren't helping him, John. Your pride was suffocating him. I just gave him room to breathe. The word slithered between us. He stepped closer. Soft voice, dangerous tone. And besides, the house has always meant more to me than it ever did to you. There it was. The slip. The truth. The reason. I let my eyes lock onto his cold and unblinking. What did you just say? He froze. Because he knew what he had revealed. Not guilt. Not regret. Ownership. He wanted the house. And this wasn't about Ethan. This was about a plan years in the making. I stepped closer, just enough for him to feel it. Tell me why I whispered. Tell me why my house matters to you. Mark swallowed, but he didn't speak. So I asked again, even softer. What are you hiding in my house, Mark? His pupils tightened, and I knew instantly. He wasn't trying to take my house. He was trying to get back inside it. Because something big was hidden there. Something he didn't want me to find. Something he needed complete control over the property to retrieve. And that was why he needed Ethan. Not for love, not for help, but because Ethan was naive enough to sign. I whispered, how long has it been there? Mark's face drained of color. He stumbled back a step. And in that moment, that tiny, fearful moment, I realized part 1. Part 2, part 3, and part 4 were only the surface. The real story had just begun. Mark didn't answer my question. He didn't deny it. He didn't scoff. He didn't roll his eyes the way he always did when he wanted to look like the smartest man in the room. He just froze. A stillness so unnatural It made the hair on the back of my neck rise. The kind of stillness that tells you someone has been caught long before they ever planned to confess. He stepped back slowly, like he needed to put distance between himself and the truth that had just slipped out of my mouth. I watched his eyes. They weren't looking at me anymore. They were calculating, measuring, scanning the room for an exit he didn't actually have. "John," he finally said, voice tightening at the edges, "I think you're upset, and you're jumping to conclusions." "No," I interrupted softly. "I'm asking you plainly. What's in my house, Mark?" His throat clenched. He forced a smile, thin, rigid, the kind people stretch across their faces when they're aware their mask is crumbling. "Don't be ridiculous," he scoffed weakly. "I don't keep anything in your house." "You didn't hesitate when I asked the question." I cut in. "That tells me more than any answer you can hide right now." His jaw flexed. His eyes flicked to the left. Just 1 second. One tiny, involuntary movement. But it was enough. Mark wasn't afraid of me discovering that Ethan forged my signature. He wasn't afraid of the loan. He wasn't afraid of the house changing ownership. He was afraid of me walking into a room in my own home and finding something he had left behind. Something he could only access again if he controlled the deed. Ethan, standing outside by the window, didn't hear the words, but he felt the shift. His breath fogged the glass as he tried to read our faces. Mark stepped closer to me, lowering his voice. "You're imagining things," he whispered. "You always have. You see ghosts in corners, danger in shadows. You've done this your whole life." "That's not an answer," I said. He swallowed. "You're angry 'cause of the loan." "And you're lying," I replied calmly, "because you're sweating." His eyes widened. He raised a hand to his forehead instinctively, then froze when he realized he'd just exposed himself further. The room tightened around him. His voice broke first. "You don't know what you're talking about." "I do," I said softly. "And so do you." He stepped back until his shoulders hit the wall. "John, stop it," he hissed. "You think you know something, but you have no idea what the hell you're getting into." And yet I replied quietly, "Whatever I'm getting into started in my house." His breath hitched. That was it. The slip he couldn't take back. I took one slow step closer. "Did you hide something there?" I asked calmly. "Or did you leave something behind that you don't want me to find?" He didn't answer. He didn't need to. His silence was the confession. I heard Ethan's footsteps outside. He couldn't stand it anymore. The waiting, the guessing. The guilt splitting him open. He came rushing in. "Uncle Mark, please," Ethan pleaded. "Just tell him. I'm the one who dragged him into this mess. Don't make it worse." Mark turned on him so fast it made Ethan stumble backward. "You don't speak," Mark snapped. "You don't say a word." Ethan froze, stunned by a tone he had never heard from his uncle. And that was the moment I understood. This wasn't the first time Mark raised his voice at him. This wasn't the first time Mark pressed him, pushed him, pressured him. Ethan wasn't just manipulated. He was used, weaponized. I stepped between them before Mark could take another step. "Don't talk to my son like that," I said quietly. Mark's face twisted. "He wouldn't be in this mess if you hadn't. He wouldn't be in this mess if you hadn't used him," I cut in. His mouth opened. Closed. Opened again. No words came out, because the lie he'd been rehearsing didn't fit anymore. The walls were closing in. He tried again. "You don't know what's at stake," he whispered, voice shaking now. "You don't know what's coming." I tilted my head slightly. "And that," I said, "sounds like a threat." His face drained white. "No," he said quickly. "No, John, it's not." But the fear in his voice said otherwise. I took another breath. Slow. Even. Measured. "Fine," I whispered. "If you won't tell me what's in my house, then I'll find it myself." Mark lunged forward. "Don't!" he shouted. For the first time that morning, Ethan's face changed. Fear wasn't the only thing in his eyes now. There was understanding, recognition. A puzzle piece had clicked. "Uncle Mark," Ethan whispered, trembling, "what did you leave in Dad's house?" Mark pressed his hands into his hair, pacing, unraveling. "It wasn't supposed to be like this," he muttered. "You weren't supposed." "God, Ethan, why did you tell him? Why didn't you just let me handle it?" "Handle what?" Ethan pleaded. "Tell us." Mark stopped pacing. He looked at us, both of us, with the eyes of a man cornered by his own past. And then he whispered something I wasn't prepared for. "It's not my secret." The room went still again. This wasn't about money, or greed, or property. Someone else was involved. Someone bigger. Someone dangerous enough that Mark, my brother, manipulative, but never a coward, was shaking. I felt a coldness spread through my chest. "Then whose secret is it?" Mark's voice broke. "Yours," he whispered. My heart didn't stop. It sank, slowly, quietly, like it already knew. Ethan's voice trembled. "Dada, what's he talking about?" I didn't know. Not yet. But Mark did. And whatever it was, he had hidden it in my house. Not to protect himself. Not to steal from me. But because someone else wanted it buried. And they wanted it buried so badly, they used my own brother to do it. Mark covered his face with both hands and whispered, "You weren't supposed to find out this way." But the truth was already rising, and nothing could bury it now. Mark's hands were still covering his face when the words slipped through his fingers. "You weren't supposed to find out this way." My heart didn't race. It dropped slowly, heavily, the way a man's heart falls when the past he buried starts crawling back toward the light. Ethan looked at him, then at me, eyes pleading for clarity. Neither of us had yet. "Daddy," whispered, "what does he mean it's your secret?" I didn't answer, because I didn't know. But Mark did. He lowered his hands, eyes red, breathing uneven as if the weight of holding this truth was crushing him bone by bone. "I hid it," he said quietly. "I hid it because I promised her I would." Her. The word hung hit me like a cold blade. There were only 3 women in my life whose names he could use to turn my blood cold. My mother, my wife, or the one woman I never talked about. But before my thoughts could connect to any of them, Ethan stepped forward. "Who?" he asked. "Who made you promise?" Mark kept his eyes on me. Not Ethan, not the floor. Me. It wasn't my place to tell, he whispered. I was supposed to protect you from it. Protect me from what I asked, my voice steady but tightening at the edges. He swallowed hard. "You think this is about money? Or the house? Or the loan?" He shook his head slowly. "It's not. None of that matters." Ethan's voice rose in confusion and fear. "Then what matters, Uncle Mark? You manipulated me. You made me sign papers. Why? What's in that house?" Mark closed his eyes. When he opened them again, the man standing in front of me wasn't the brother I knew. He looked older, defeated, haunted. "John," he whispered, "it's about the basement." Everything in me stilled. The basement. My house had a basement. I almost never entered. Not because I feared it, but because I had no reason to go there. It was where old tools, leftover lumber, dusty boxes, and forgotten decades were stored. A room that lived under the house, the way memories live under a man's skin. I studied his face carefully. What about the basement? Mark rubbed his palms together. Something he did when he was lying or afraid. Right now, he was both. 20 years ago, he began before Ethan was even a teenager. She came to me. She gave me something. Told me to hide it somewhere you'd never find it. My chest tightened. Who is she? I asked. Mark shook his head. I promised her. Who? I repeated, voice low, sharp, cutting. The silence that followed was heavy enough to bend wood. Mark finally let the name fall from his lips. Emma. My wife, Ethan gasped softly. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. It was as if someone had reached into my chest and turned my heart to stone, leaving it cold and unmoving. Mark watched me carefully. She came to my house one night, he whispered. You were working late. She was shaking, crying. She said she needed a place to put something away, somewhere safe, somewhere only someone she trusted could reach. I still didn't move, still didn't speak. John, she made me swear on my life not to tell you, he continued. She said you weren't ready. She said knowing would destroy you. Ethan shook his head rapidly. No, this doesn't make sense. Mom never hid things from Dad. But Mark cut him off. You didn't know her the way we did Ethan. That sentence twisted something inside my chest. A quiet ache I had learned to live with, suddenly tearing itself open again. I finally forced myself to speak. What did she give you? Mark looked away. Tell me, I said. When he faced me again, there was no avoiding it. She gave me a box, he whispered. A locked box. Wooden, old, heavy. I never opened it. Never touched it after that day. My voice stayed steady. And you hid it in my basement. He nodded. It's behind the far wall. Inside the crawl space. Covered with the panels. You damn told unless you knew exactly where to look. I felt a strange hollow pressure build in my chest. Why didn't she give it to me? I asked, quietly. Mark exhaled. She said you'd never accept what was inside. The air thickened. Ethan's voice broke next. Inside what? What's in the box? Mark's reply was nearly a whisper. A truth she couldn't carry. One she didn't want you to carry alone. I stared at him. Then a colder thought cut through me. Why now? I asked. Why take the house now? He looked down. Because the bank contacted me. He whispered. They said if the deed stayed under your name, they couldn't release the freeze on the property. I frowned. What freeze? Mark closed his eyes again. Your basement is flagged. The words hit me like a brick into the spine. Flagged? By who? Why? Ethan's voice trembled. Uncle Mark? What did Mom hide in there? Mark finally said the sentence I wasn't ready to hear. She hid something that belongs to you, but changes everything you think you know about your past. The room was silent again. Not tense, not angry, just quietly broken. I felt something cold settle into my bones. A truth buried 20 years ago. A box hidden in my basement. A freeze placed on my property. And a brother who had been living with a secret that wasn't his to keep. John Mark whispered, You can't open that box alone. But the decision had already been made long before this moment. I stepped toward the door. I'm opening it tonight. Mark's voice cracked. John, don't. If you open it. I turned. His face was pale. His hands shook. And for the first time in my life, I saw real fear in my brother's eyes. "John," he whispered, "if you open that box, you'll never look at Emma the same way again." I didn't rush into the basement. I stood at the top of the stairs for a moment, my hand resting on the railing, feeling the weight of 20 years pressed against my spine. The air seeping up from below was cool, stale, carrying the scent of dust and forgotten seasons. Beside me, Ethan hovered like a shadow, unsure, frightened, and yet trying his best to stay steady for me. "Dad, are you sure you want to do this tonight?" he asked softly. I didn't turn to him. "If I wait until tomorrow," I said, "whatever truth your mother left down there will still be waiting. It's time." He swallowed hard, then nodded. "I'm coming with you." We stepped down together, one slow, creaking stair at a time. The basement light flickered when I hit the switch, warming into a dim yellow glow that revealed the same old shelves, boxes, and tools I'd ignored for years. Nothing looked unusual. Nothing looked out of place. And that's what unsettled me even more. Secrets rarely announce themselves. I scanned the room, trying to imagine Emma's hands touching any of these shelves, pushing aside boxes, hiding something only she and Mark knew existed. "Where exactly did he say it was?" Ethan asked quietly. "Behind the far wall," I replied. "The one with the wood panels." Ethan turned toward it. "Those panels look newer than the rest." I nodded. If I had known back then, maybe I would have questioned why that wall looked freshly patched. Maybe I would have wondered why Emma's eyes always fluttered away when I asked if she needed help storing anything. But I hadn't wondered. I trusted her completely. We walked toward the back wall together. The panels were simple, thin, unfinished wood, held in place with a handful of nails. Not done by a carpenter. Done by someone in a rush. Someone with shaking hands. I touched the surface. Cold. Dusty. But beneath the dust, I felt something else, certainty. Ethan watched me. "If this hurts you, Dad, if it's something heavy, you don't have to open it alone." I looked at him, really looked at him. For the first time since this whole nightmare began, he wasn't the boy who forged a signature. He wasn't the young man manipulated by Mark. He was my son, standing where he was needed, exactly when he was needed. "This is something I have to face myself," I said. "But I'm glad you're here." He stepped back as I pulled a thin, rusted scraper from the workbench and slid it beneath the edge of the first panel. The nail groaned, then popped free. One by one, I worked down the wall, the sound of metal giving way, echoing around the basement. When the last panel came loose, I lifted it aside. Behind it was a dark crawl space, narrow, dusty, neglected. And inside it, something waited. A wooden box, old, blackened with age, locked with a small iron clasp speckled with rust. Ethan's breath caught. "Dad? That belonged to Mom." I reached in, pulling it out carefully. It was heavier than I expected. Too heavy for just memories. I set it on the work table. The lock was brittle. One twist of my hand and it broke with a dull snap. The lid creaked open. Dust lifted into the air like a sigh from the past. Inside, wrapped in fabric that used to be beige but had faded to a tired yellow, were several items. A stack of letters tied together with a thin ribbon. a bundle of documents bound by twine, a small key, and on top of them all, a thick envelope sealed, marked with handwriting I would have recognized blind for John only when he's ready. My throat tightened. Ethan whispered, "Dad, she knew you'd find this one day." But my eyes didn't stay on the envelope. They drifted lower, to the bundle of documents beneath it. One sheet pulled out, a faded stamp, a red seal, and nearly rubbed me. Will put the letter turning back at me. Confidential witness statement. Below it, case number 47219. My breath went shallow. Ethan leaned closer. What case is that? Did she witness something? I didn't answer. Something inside me had gone cold. He followed my gaze, looking at the rest of the document. At the name typed near the bottom. The name neither of us ever expected to see. Ethan's face drained. That's Uncle Mark's name. It hit like a punch. I wasn't ready for. Not a hit to the body. A hit to the past. To the years I thought I understood. To the truth I believed Emma and I shared. She gave a statement. Ethan whispered, against him. I still couldn't speak. Because now, I understood why Mark panicked. Why he manipulated Ethan. Why he pushed for the house. Why he wanted access to this basement more desperately than I imagined. He wasn't hiding my secret. He was hiding her secret. A secret she kept from me. A secret she trusted him with. A secret she buried under my home so I'd never stumble across it. Except now, I had. Dad, what was Mark involved in? Ethan asked. But that's the thing. I didn't know. Not yet. But the answers were here locked in letters Emma wrote, with shaking hands filed in a witness statement she never told me about, buried in a box that had slept in my basement for 2 decades. I reached for the envelope with my name on it. My fingers trembled for the first time all night. Inside that envelope was the one truth Emma didn't want me to face until I was ready. I wasn't ready, but tonight readiness didn't matter. Truth did. I slid my thumb beneath the seal and opened it. And whatever was inside was about to rewrite everything I thought I knew about my wife, my brother, and myself. For a moment, I just stood there with the envelope in my hands. The paper was worn, the edges softened by time, as if Emma had held it too many times before finally sealing it shut. It felt strange to touch something she had prepared 20 years ago. Something meant for a version of me she wasn't sure would ever exist. Ethan hovered beside me, barely breathing. Dad, whatever's inside, we'll get through it. I didn't look at him. My fingers slid under the flap, breaking the seal, with a soft tear that sounded far louder than it should have. Inside were 2 sheets of paper. One folded letter written in Emma's handwriting, and one crisp document, untouched by age, like someone had edited it later. I lifted the letter first. Emma's handwriting washed over me instantly, soft curves, steady lines, the same way she wrote grocery lists, birthday notes, and the little messages she used to leave in my coat pocket on cold mornings. But these sentences were different. These were heavier. John, if you're reading this, it means I'm gone, and it means the day I feared has finally arrived. My chest tightened. I kept reading. I need you to know first that I loved you. I loved our son. Nothing I did in the years we were together was out of betrayal. It was out of fear. Fear of what would happen if the truth came out, and fear of what it would do to you. Fear of what it would do to me. I felt Ethan's hand brush my arm. Keep going, he whispered. So I did. There is something you never knew about the year before we were married. Something I never found the courage to tell you. Something I should have told you, but by the time I thought you were ready, we had Ethan, and we had a life, and the moment had passed. I could hear her voice in my head as I read, calm, controlled, but underneath, trembling. What I witnessed, it involved Mark. I stopped. Ethan inhaled sharply, but I continued. There was an incident one night at the old construction yard near the river. I went there looking for Mark because he hadn't come home for 2 days. I was worried something had happened to him. I shouldn't have gone alone, but I was young, and I didn't know any better. My eyes skimmed ahead. John, I saw him with a man I later learned had disappeared. Completely. Without a trace. Cold air settled into my lungs. I didn't see what happened to him, not the moment it happened, but I saw enough. I saw the threat. I saw the violence. I heard the argument. And I saw Mark drag something heavy across the ground and load it into a truck that wasn't his. My fingers tightened on the paper. He didn't know I was there. He didn't see me. And the next day, there was a missing person poster in town for that same man. The room spun for a second. Emma, my wife, she saw something connected to a man who vanished. Ethan whispered, Dad, Mom saw Mark involved in something criminal. But the letter wasn't finished. I didn't go to the police at first. I didn't know what I had truly seen. But weeks went by. The man was never found. His family begged for answers. And I realized that if I stayed silent, I was part of the lie. My breath tightened. So I went to the police. I gave a statement. That's the document you found. I didn't name Mark directly. I was too afraid, but I described everything I witnessed. The argument, the truck, the movement. They kept my statement sealed for my protection. I felt a stabbing pressure behind my ribs. Mark found out. Not from me. From someone inside the department, someone who owed him a favor. He came to my door. He begged me not to tell you. He said if you learned what he did, you would throw away everything. You would destroy yourself trying to fix what couldn't be undone. A tremor moved through my hands. He swore it was an accident, John. He said he didn't mean for things to go that far that night. He said he panicked. And he said, if you ever learned the truth, you would hate him more than you knew how to hate. Ethan looked sick. But the letter wasn't over. I hid the statement for years. When you and I built our life, I didn't want to shatter it with something that happened before us. Mark promised he'd never come near us again. He promised he'd change. And for a while, he did. My jaw clenched. But then he came back, not physically, not violently. But he began calling again, asking for help, asking for money, asking for waivers, threatening to tell you everything if I didn't help him. I felt Ethan tense beside me. I didn't want to put this weight on you, John, so I hid it. I hid it in the one place you never went, our basement. Not because I didn't trust you, but because I was scared of how far you might go if you ever learned what he had done. My throat burned. If you are reading this, it means the truth has reached you anyway. And I need you to do one thing. Do not confront him in anger. If this resurfaces, go to the police. Let the law handle him, not you. My hands tightened, Ethan whispered. Dad, there's one more page. I unfolded the second sheet, a document printed cleanly. Not aged like the witness statement added recently. At the top, a date, 2 weeks before Emma died. Below it, a name, the missing man, and a line typed beneath, case reopened. Due to new evidence. Ethan staggered back. Mom knew the case was being reopened on. That's why she gave Mark the box. She thought he'd protect us. But my eyes were fixed on the bottom of the page. A single handwritten note from Emma added in fresh ink. If this reaches you, John, please forgive me. I hid the truth to protect you. I never wanted you to carry the weight of what your brother did. My vision blurred, not from tears. From rage so controlled, it turned into something colder. Ethan whispered, Dad, what do we do now? I folded the letter slowly. We finish this, I said. We finish what your mother started 20 years ago. I didn't say a word for a long time. Not to Ethan. Not to myself. Not to whatever was left of the night pressing against the basement windows. I just stood there with Emma's letter in my hands, the weight of 20 years settling inside my ribcage like wet cement. Her handwriting felt alive, her voice echoing through each sentence, a whisper from a past she tried so desperately to protect. When I finally looked up, Ethan was staring at me, eyes red, trembling with something between fear and guilt. Dad, I'm so sorry, he choked. If I had known, if I had understood anything, I would never have signed those papers. I swear. I reached out, placing a hand on his shoulder. Ethan, this wasn't your fault. He shook his head violently. It was Uncle Mark used me because I let him. Because I trusted him. Because I thought... His voice cracked. I thought he loved us like family. I squeezed gently. He doesn't love anyone the way you think. Then softer. That's why he's dangerous. Ethan swallowed hard, glancing at the box again. Are you going to confront him? I looked at the crawl space, the opened box. Fire. Emma's final words. If this resurfaces, go to the police, not to Mark. Part of me wanted to listen. Part of me wanted to take the safest path Emma laid out. But another part, the part that had lived a lifetime alongside my brother's shadow, knew the truth. Some conversations cannot be outsourced to the law. Some endings have to be spoken between the people who caused them. I turned toward the stairs. Dad, Ethan whispered. I didn't stop. Stay here, I said. He grabbed my arm, desperate. Dad, please, don't do anything stupid. I looked at him, then really looked, and I smiled, not with warmth, but with understanding. Son, I've been stupid in many ways, but this isn't one of them. I left the basement. My footsteps were steady, quiet, measured. Every light in the house felt too bright. Every shadow too familiar. And somehow, for the first time, I felt Emma walking beside me, not physically, but in the heaviness of her truth. When I opened the front door, the cold air met my face, with a sting that brought me back completely. Mark's house wasn't far. He always stayed close. Close enough to watch. Close enough to use. Close enough to take. I walked the short path down the street, each step sinking deeper into a silence that stretched between the two of us for 20 long years. The lights in his living room were still on. He hadn't slept. Maybe he couldn't. When I knocked, once the door opened almost immediately, just like before. Only this time, his face wasn't composed. He looked broken. "John," he whispered. I stepped inside. He closed the door with shaking fingers, as if he already knew the conversation he feared had finally arrived. For a moment, neither of us spoke. He sat down heavily on the edge of a chair. I remained standing. "You read the letter," he said. It wasn't a question. It was the resignation of a man who'd run out of places to hide. "Yes," I said quietly. He nodded once. Then he placed his face in his hands. "I never wanted her to tell you." I didn't respond. I tried to change. He said, voice trembling. "After that night, after what happened with that man, I swore I'd never go back to that life. I swore I'd clean myself up. I did everything she asked." "You blackmailed her," I said calmly. His head snapped up. "No, you threatened her with the truth she gave to the police." "I didn't threaten her," he insisted weakly. "I begged her. I told her if you found out, you would never forgive me." "And you're right," I replied. He froze. There it was. The sentence he'd spent 20 years trying to avoid. He opened his mouth, then closed it, then whispered, "John, I'm your brother." "Yes," I said. "And Emma was my wife. And Ethan is my son. And you used them, manipulated them, dragged them into something they never deserved." His voice cracked. "I didn't mean to." "You did," I said softly. "Every step." He shook his head violently. "No, you don't understand." I was scared. That case, it was going to reopen. The moment it did, everything would collapse. I needed the house because the papers were there. If the police searched it, "You needed my house," I repeated, "because Emma hid the truth there." He looked up at me then, eyes glassy, haunted. "She trusted me," he whispered. "She asked me to protect you. And I did, for years. Until everything fell apart." Silence stretched between us. "Long, cold, final," Markham, I said quietly. "Emma didn't ask you to protect me. She asked you to protect the truth until I was ready." He flinched, and now I continued, "I am." His voice was barely audible. "What are you going to do?" I walked toward the door. Exactly what she wrote. His breath shook. You're going to the police?" "I am." He stood abruptly, panic consuming him. "John, if they reopen the case..." "They already did," I said. He froze. I opened the door. He whispered, "Can you forgive me?" I looked back at him, my brother, my blood, my oldest wound. "No," I said, "but I can let the truth do what it should have done 20 years ago." His face crumbled. I stepped outside. The cold night hit my skin again, but this time it didn't sting. It cleared the air. It cleared everything. When I walked home, Ethan was waiting at the door. He didn't ask what happened. He just looked into my eyes, searching for the ending. I placed a hand on his shoulder. "It's over," I said quietly. "One way or another, the truth is finally where it belongs." He nodded slowly. And later that night, when he went to bed, I returned to the basement alone. I sat beside the open box, Emma's letter resting in my hands. And for the first time in years, I spoke to her in the silence. "You were right," I whispered. "The truth did hurt. But hiding it hurt us longer." The house felt different, lighter. Or maybe I was the one who had changed. Either way, it was finally time to breathe again.